Imagine Americans spending $158 billion on something this year, which is, more than ever before in history, but actually using it less.
Right, which sounds totally backwards.
It does. It's this bizarre paradox happening right now with our pets.
Yeah.
So according to the American Pet Products Association, in 2025, U.S. pet industry spending hit this absolutely staggering $158 billion.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's projected to reach $165 billion in 2026. I mean, if you look around your living room right now, you probably see like a premium chew toy or an expensive bag of specialized kibble or maybe a highly opinionated creature just staring back at you.
Yeah, demanding a treat.
Exactly. We are opening our wallets wider than ever. But here is the twist.
And it's a twist that really defies basic economic logic. I mean, you would think with $158 billion flowing through the system, veterinary waiting rooms would just be standing room only.
Right. You'd think they'd be packed.
But they're not. The American Veterinary Medical Association released numbers that paint a very different picture. In 2025, veterinary practice revenues went up by about 2.5%. Okay.
However, the actual number of clinical visits fell by roughly 3%.
So wait, if foot traffic is down by 3%, the normal business reflex would be to, lower prices to get people back in the door?
You'd think so, yeah.
But instead, the industry seems to be doing the exact opposite. They're doubling down on high-end luxury care, which, well, that brings us to our mission for this deep dive.
Let's get into it.
We are unpacking a recent Inc. article that details a massive new merger in the pet care space. And it is a deal that perfectly captures this exact moment in veterinary medicine. A moment where the industry is caught in this massive tug of war between premium care, corporate consolidation, and consumer affordability.
It really is a watershed moment, to be honest. The landscape is shifting dramatically under our feet. We're moving from, independent neighborhood clinics to highly sophisticated, well-funded corporate networks. Okay, let's unpack this. We have two major players joining forces here, and it is not a small operation. I'm looking at the sources in these numbers. Over 55 clinics, 1,000 employees. That's a massive corporate footprint.
Huge.
But veterinary care is deeply personal.
Yeah.
It's not like running 55 fast food franchises.
Yeah.
So who exactly is merging, and how do they actually pull this off?
So the two entities are Bond Vet and Small Door Veterinary. If you live in a major metro area, especially in the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, or the Midwest, you have probably seen their storefronts.
Oh, yeah. They're super modern looking.
Very. They are highly visible, beautifully designed, premium brands. By merging, they are creating one of the largest premium veterinary networks in the entire country.
Wow.
To give you a sense of the scale here, this new combined company will employ an army of over 170 veterinarians.
That's a lot of vets.
It is, and together they're projected to serve more than 500,000 pets.
500,000 pets under one corporate umbrella. I mean, merging these companies isn't just about changing the signs on the door, right? It has to be a massive cultural collision. How do they actually reconcile the leadership of these two giant brands?
Well, they're setting up a unified executive team, but they are drawing very specifically from both sides to do it. So Florent Père, who co-founded Small Door, is stepping in as the CEO of the combined company.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then Joe Altobelli, who is the president and CFO over at Bond Vet, he is shifting into the role of executive strategic advisor.
Gotcha.
And Dr. Jamie Richardson, who is also from Small Door, is taking the position of chief medical officer. Now, for now, they are keeping their separate brand names on the buildings.
So you'll still see Bond Vet and Small Door.
Right. But the stated long-term goal is to eventually unify everything under a single identity.
Interesting. But what strikes me is that they aren't just duplicating the exact same service, right? They actually bring two very distinct business models to the table. And merging those models sounds like, honestly, a massive operational headache.
It is definitely a complex integration. Let's look at how different their foundations actually are. So Small Door launched in 2018, and they really leaned into a membership-based primary care model.
Like a subscription.
Exactly. They offer 24/7 digital access through an app. They have highly transparent pricing structures, and they aggressively market their strict adherence to American Animal Hospital Association accreditation, or AAHA.
Let's pause on that accreditation for a second, because it sounds like, a fancy plaque on the wall. But what does that actually mean for the consumer? Is it rare?
It is actually quite rare, yeah. Only about 12 to 15% of veterinary practices in the US and Canada hold AAHA accreditation.
Oh, wow, that is low.
Yeah, it means a clinic is regularly evaluated on about 900 different rigorous quality standards.
Sure.
Yeah, everything from pain management protocols to the specific types of anesthesia monitoring equipment they use. It requires a tremendous amount of overhead, staff training, specialized equipment just to maintain it.
Which I'm guessing you pay for.
Exactly. That high standard is absolutely baked into Small Door's premium membership fees.
Right, so that is almost like a high-end concierge medical practice for humans. You pay your subscription, you get the app, you get your routine care. But then you have Bond Vet, which has a totally different vibe.
Very different. So Bond Vet came onto the scene a year later, in 2019. And they built their reputation heavily around urgent care.
Like a walk-in clinic.
Yeah, acting as a bridge between a standard vet and a 24-hour emergency room. From there, they expanded their physical footprint into more complex procedures, like advanced dental services and soft tissue surgeries.
So it's like merging that concierge medical practice with a top-tier urgent care and surgical network. You can clearly see the business logic there. But the Inc. article mentions that Florent Pay, the new CEO, he claims these two are sister companies, teaming up to solve the fragmentation that plagues veterinary medicine. And I have to push back on that.
Okay, how so?
Well, does swallowing up market share and getting bigger actually solve fragmentation for you and me as consumers? Or does it just create a bigger, more centralized corporation?
What's fascinating here is the theoretical argument they are making for scale. Because in theory, a larger unified network directly benefits the consumer by eliminating the friction of that fragmented system.
The friction, yeah.
Think about the traditional pet care journey for a moment. You go to your local primary vet for a checkup. They find an issue with your dog's teeth, right? But they don't have the equipment for a complex extraction, so they refer you to a specialist across town.
And usually that specialist is booked out for like 6 weeks.
Exactly. Or say it's an emergency on a Sunday, your primary vet is closed, obviously.
Right.
So you have to frantically search for a completely different 24-hour emergency clinic. And then Monday morning, you are physically carrying paper records or having PDFs emailed back and forth just so your primary vet knows what happened over the weekend.
Yeah, it is incredibly disjointed. And the pet owner basically acts as the middleman for all the medical data.
Which is incredibly stressful, especially when you are already worried about a sick animal.
Yeah, nobody wants to deal with paperwork when their dog is throwing up.
Right. So the premise of this mega merger is that scale smooths all of that out. By combining Small Door's digital primary care with Bond Vet's urgent and surgical capabilities, they argue they can offer better appointment availability because they have a much deeper bench of staff.
Okay.
They can afford to invest in integrated proprietary software. So ideally, they create a seamless pipeline. Your pet's data, medical history, care plan, it all follows them effortlessly from a routine checkup to an urgent weekend visit, right through to a surgical procedure, all within the exact same digital ecosystem.
I see the logic. I really do. A seamless pipeline of care sounds amazing on paper. But, and here's the massive elephant in the room, a seamless pipeline is completely useless if no one can afford to walk through the front door.
That is the big catch.
And that brings us right back to that paradox we opened with. The industry is making more money, but fewer animals are actually seeing the vet.
And this is where the data from the source material gets incredibly sobering. It highlights a state of pet care study conducted by PetSmart Charities and Gallup, and the findings are just a stark reality check.
Lay it on me.
52% of pet parents reported that they have skipped or declined needed veterinary care for their animals.
That's more than half. Over half of the people who own pets in this country are actively saying no to medical care their pet actually needs.
Yeah. And when you drill down into the why behind that 52%, it's driven almost entirely by economics. 71% of those pet owners explicitly cited cost as the primary barrier.
Now, it is really easy to assume this is strictly an issue for, lower-income families who are just struggling to make ends meet.
Sure.
But the article points out a really surprising nuance that kind of flips the script on how we view pet care. This affordability crisis is hitting the middle and upper middle class hard, too.
Really hard.
According to the data, about a third of households earning over $90,000 a year also declined veterinary care strictly for financial reasons.
Let's really pause on that for a second.
Yeah.
We are talking about households with relatively high disposable income hitting a brick wall when they see the estimate for their pet's care.
Yeah.
Routine veterinary care, let alone emergency surgery, has officially outpaced upper-middle-class discretionary income in a lot of markets. And it is not just the consumers feeling this pain. The pressure on the provider side is immense.
The vets themselves.
Exactly. This study found that 94% of veterinarians said that their clients' financial limitations directly restrict their ability to provide the recommended standard of care.
94%. I mean, if you were listening to this and you felt guilty about wincing at a massive vet bill recently, you are clearly not alone.
Not at all.
And think about what that means for the vet. Almost every single veterinarian out there is looking at a sick animal, knowing exactly what treatment is needed, but having to compromise or delay or hold back because the owners simply cannot afford the gold standard of care. That has to be incredibly demoralizing for them.
It creates a tremendous bottleneck. The phrase the article uses is access, but it makes the crucial point that simply opening more beautifully designed premium clinics doesn't actually solve the access problem if the price point remains fundamentally out of reach for the majority of the population.
Which leads to a really interesting contradiction I noticed in the text regarding the alternative.
Yeah.
So the PetSmart Charities data notes that about 4 in 10 pet owners, so 40%, are actively interested in cheaper or more accessible alternatives.
Right.
Things like community clinics, telehealth services, or even in-home visits. But then you look at the actual usage rates, and they are abysmal.
They really are.
Only 16% actually use community clinics. Telehealth is sitting at 8%. In-home visits are also at 8%. I don't get it. If cost is such a massive, prohibitive barrier and people say they want cheaper options, why aren't they utilizing these alternatives?
It is a fascinating behavioral disconnect for sure.
Right.
Part of it is infrastructure, right? If your trusted vet doesn't offer telehealth or the low-cost community clinic is booked out for months, well, interest doesn't translate into action.
That makes sense.
But if we dig into the behavioral economics of telehealth specifically, veterinary medicine is just fundamentally different from human medicine.
How so? Like, because they can't talk?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about a human telehealth appointment. You can look at your doctor over Zoom and say, hey, my throat hurts when I swallow, and I have a sharp pain in my lower right abdomen. You can articulate your symptoms. A dog or a cat cannot.
Right. They just sit there and look miserable.
Yeah, so much of veterinary diagnostics relies on physical palpation, feeling the abdomen, listening to the heart, checking the temperature. Because of that inherent limitation, consumers don't fully trust vet telehealth yet, even if it is cheaper.
They don't want to waste their money.
Exactly. They worry they will pay for a digital consultation only to be told, well, you have to come into the clinic anyway.
That makes total sense. The value proposition just isn't there yet for the consumer. So, knowing all this, knowing that 52% of people are skipping care due to cost, how is this newly merged Small Door and Bond Vet entity responding? Like, do they have a grand plan to lower costs now that they have this massive economy of scale?
According to CEO Florent Perret, no.
Oh, just straight up no.
He explicitly told Inc. that the combined company does not plan any immediate changes to their pricing structures or their telehealth access. He stated that their immediate priority is ensuring continuity of care and a seamless experience for our clients.
Okay, so sticking to the premium model.
He did add a caveat that if payment structures change down the line, they will communicate it, but they are definitely not trying to disrupt the premium price point right now.
So they are betting entirely on the premium consumer.
Yeah.
They aren't trying to build a discount brand. They're building a highly efficient, highly connected luxury brand for the slice of the market that can still afford to stay in that ecosystem.
Precisely. They are wagering that the consumer who can afford it will gladly pay top dollar for the sheer convenience of a unified, friction-free experience.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because to build a unified experience on this scale, we're talking 55 clinics in prime real estate, over 1,000 employees, all this proprietary software. That takes an astronomical amount of cash.
A ton of cash.
And that cash isn't just coming from the profit margins of, selling doggy dental cleanings. We are seeing a massive Wall Street takeover of Main Street vets.
This is the underlying current driving the entire industry right now. This merger and the premium pet care space in general is being heavily fueled by private capital. We were moving far beyond a couple of successful local vets deciding to open a second location. This is institutional investment at a staggering scale.
Let's follow the money here. What kind of backing are we actually talking about?
Let's just look at the individual funding rounds before the merger even happened. In 2021, BondVet secured a $170 million investment from Warburg Pincus, which is a major private equity firm.
170 million. Wow.
Yeah. Then you have Small Door, which raised $55 million in 2025. That was split into $35 million in equity, led by Wellspring Capital, and a $20 million debt facility from Bridge Bank.
Let's clarify that term for a second, because when you say a $20 million debt facility, that isn't just a standard bank loan you get from your local branch, is it?
No. It is essentially a massive corporate credit line. It allows a rapidly growing company like Small Door to access huge amounts of cash to sign expensive commercial leases, build out state-of-the-art clinics, and hire staff really quickly, all without having to sell off more ownership equity to venture capitalists.
Right.
It is basically a high-octane fuel for rapid expansion.
So hundreds of millions of dollars are being injected into these clinics.
Yeah.
And post-merger, what happens to all that money?
That capital structure remains firmly intact. The combined entity is retaining its backing from CNS Capital Partners, Wellspring Capital, and Warburg Pincus. Pear actually described this whole merger as a CEO-led, operator-driven decision, but he made sure to explicitly note it is heavily backed by these long-term institutional investors.
But why veterinary clinics?
Yeah.
Of all the industries private equity could pour hundreds of millions of dollars into, why are they suddenly so obsessed with dogs and cats?
It comes down to the unique economics of pet care. First of all, it is largely a cash pay business.
Oh, because of insurance.
Right. Unlike human healthcare, which is just bogged down by Medicare, Medicaid, complex insurance negotiations, vet clinics collect cash at the point of service.
That's simple.
Very. Second, the recurring revenue is incredibly sticky. Pets need annual vaccines, flea medication, checkups.
Yep, every year.
And third, there is massive emotional elasticity of demand.
Meaning we love our pets.
Exactly. People will go into debt to save their pets. Private equity sees an industry with guaranteed cash flow and a customer base that is emotionally primed to pay whatever it takes.
That explains why this cannot be an isolated incident. With the pet industry pulling in nearly $160 billion a year, Wall Street has to be looking at the entire board, not just these two companies.
Oh, they are. The data shows an absolute frenzy of consolidation right now. The article cites Capstone Partners, who reported a massive acceleration in pet sector mergers and acquisitions in early 2026. Just in the first part of the year, there were 18 announced or completed transactions.
Just in a few months.
Yeah. And to put that in perspective, in the same period the previous year, there were only 8.
The pace of acquisitions more than doubled in a single year.
It did. And we are seeing other massive combinations out there that follow this exact playbook. For instance, in late 2024, Southern Veterinary Partners and Mission Veterinary Partners joined forces.
Okay.
They later launched as a unified entity called Mission Pet Health. So merging large regional networks into massive national platforms is just becoming the standard operating procedure.
But whenever you have a fragmented local industry, especially one that people rely on for medical care, suddenly being bought up by massive private equity firms, alarm bells usually start ringing. Is anyone actually watching this? Like, what about the regulators?
The regulators are definitely paying attention. The Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, is watching this space very, very closely.
Do they look at this specific merger?
Well, for the BondVet and Small Door merger, the company stated the transaction didn't require regulatory review. And the FTC declined to comment on this specific deal, but they did point to their own track record in the industry. Back in 2022, they took major enforcement actions against an entity called JB Consumer Partners.
What happened in that case?
The FTC actually required clinic divestitures.
Meaning they forced the company to sell off certain clinics?
Yes, exactly. The FTC determined that JB was buying up so many clinics in specific geographic areas that they were essentially creating localized monopolies.
Wow.
By forcing them to divest or sell off certain clinics to competitors, the FTC was trying to artificially inject competition back into those local markets. They also imposed strict limits on JB's future ability to acquire specialty and emergency clinics without prior approval.
This reminds me of a brilliant point in the article from Matt Parr. He's the communications director at the Private Equity Stakeholder Project, which is a watchdog group that monitors this kind of consolidation. He warns that private equity firms love what he calls roll-up strategies.
The roll-up strategy is central to understanding how this industry is changing. Basically, a private equity firm buys a platform company, like a successful regional chain, and then uses its infrastructure and capital to quietly purchase dozens, sometimes hundreds of smaller, independent neighborhood practices.
Feels a bit like playing a massive game of Monopoly, right?
How so?
Well, imagine one player is quietly buying up Baltic Avenue and St. James Place and the Boardwalk, but they're deliberately leaving the original names on the deeds. So as a consumer, you are walking around thinking you have all these different independent choices for your pet's care.
Oh, I see. But no matter which door you walk through, you are paying rent to the exact same massive bank.
Yes. You think you are price shopping for your cat's dental surgery, getting quotes from 3 different neighborhood clinics, but you don't realize one massive corporation owns the entire board.
That is the primary concern critics have with the roll-up strategy. When these acquisitions happen quietly and the local branding remains unchanged, it masks the reality of the market.
It totally hides it.
It makes it incredibly difficult for both consumers and regulators to see just how concentrated a local market has truly become. And the scale of the money moving behind the scenes to fuel this is just staggering.
Give me a sense of the scale, like how much are they spending?
The Private Equity Stakeholder Project cited data from PitchBook that puts a hard number on this. From 2017 to 2022, private equity veterinary deals in the United States totaled more than $45 billion.
Wait, $45 billion?
Yep.
In just 5 years, strictly buying up veterinary practices. That completely changes the DNA of an industry.
It fundamentally rewrites the rules. Now, the companies driving this consolidation, like the newly merged Bonvet and Small Door, argue that this scale is completely necessary. They argue that injecting $45 billion into the system upgrades outdated technology, connects disjointed medical records, and ultimately makes care more connected and efficient. They argue they are fixing the fragmentation.
So what does this all mean? We have a $160+ billion industry. We have private equity pouring tens of billions into buying up local clinics using these sophisticated debt facilities. And we have a consumer base where half the people are already skipping care because a routine emergency now outpaces middle-class income.
It means we are watching a highly capitalized bet play out in real time. The Bonvet and Small Door merger represents a massive wager that scaling up, integrating technology, and creating a seamless pipeline is the ultimate solution to a broken, fragmented system.
Right.
But the true test is whether that massive corporate scale actually delivers what pet owners desperately need. Does it make care easier to find? Does it make the medical system easier to navigate? And most importantly, does it make it easier to pay for?
That really is the real metric of success. So, to you listening, the next time you take your dog or cat in for a checkup, take a look around the waiting room. Pay attention to the branding, look at the payment structures, notice the proprietary apps they might ask you to download. You might think you are walking into a quiet, independent neighborhood vet, but there's a very good chance you are stepping into a massive, private equity-backed network.
And as you observe that shifting landscape, consider this final question based on what we've unpacked today. As these heavily funded premium membership-based clinics continue to merge and dominate prime real estate in our cities, are we inevitably heading toward a two-tiered system for pet healthcare?
A two-tiered system?
Yeah, a system where seamless, connected, high-tech care is exclusively reserved for those who can comfortably afford the monthly subscription, while everyone else is left struggling to afford basic triage at overburdened, underfunded alternatives.
This is a sobering thought, especially knowing how much we all love our pets and how much we are already spending. You're spending more than ever, but what system are you actually funding? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the business of pet care. We will catch you next time.